everybody, Kathy Syre from the Confident Leader Journey here. And one of the things I'd like to explore in this vlog is the issue of a leadership mindset. What are some of the aspects of a mindset that really set a leader up for success, turn you into someone that people want to follow, and also enable you to build confidence in your leadership? And we're going to look at three things. The first thing we're going to look at is the concept of fixed versus growth mindset. Then we're going to look at what Simon Sinek calls the infinite game, which is kind of like taking that growth mindset element and taking it even further. And then we are going to look at neuroplasticity. It's a bit of a technical term, but we'll get to that. Okay. So most of us will have heard of the issue of a fixed versus growth mindset. It's one that's taught in schools a lot now. It's definitely something that's taught to managers. And it's often taught to learners, people who are learning things. Because the fixed mindset is more based on, here's the world as I know it now, nothing's going to change. It means that I'm doing what I'm doing and there is no room or space for new information. And a growth mindset is one that is deliberately open and has the open doors to learning new things, adding new information and seeing different perspectives. So a lot of people find the fixed versus growth mindset intuitively easy to grasp. It's almost like in the UK here we have a phrase called job's worth, which is where someone goes, well, it's more than a job's worth to do something different. This is my job description, that's all I'm going to do. And that would be an example of someone demonstrating a fixed mindset. And having a growth mindset means you're seeking out new ways of doing things. You're open to hearing new ways of approaching things. Now, if we're totally honest, and we're going to be totally honest for a minute here, we all actually have elements of both. There are a lot of areas of my life where I see myself as having a growth mindset, but I have to admit there are one or two where I'm pretty fixed. There's a couple of routines I have that if you tried to change them, I would not be happy. And I think this is one of the things about the mindset of a leader. Yes, we need to make sure that we have a growth mindset ourselves and we're always learning and developing, and that this is what we're inculcating in our teams and our followers. And we're using the language of growth mindset and being open to change. But we also have to be self-aware enough to realize when we hit up against our own fixed mindset and appreciate that we all have elements of our mindset that are fixed. And it's not always easy to change it. This is particularly important when we're looking at handling diversity, equality, and inclusion in organizations. Because we might judge someone as having a fixed mindset when in fact they've got learned behaviors which are culturally embedded and very difficult to change. So it's interesting to think about that when we looked at the fixed versus growth mindset. But that openness to learning as a leader is critical. That openness to hearing different perspectives on an issue is critical. Now, I recently read a book that takes this a step further. Some of you may also have read it. It's Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game. And it goes beyond the fixed versus growth mindset to actually taking it a step further. In terms of, do you view life and resources as finite items that have to be divided up between people or things or projects? Or do you have a view that there's actually what's called an infinite game, where if we're creative enough to look at it differently, finiteness doesn't impact things? Now, this can be challenging. So, for example, you might have a work project and you've planned it out and you've only got 4 people in the team and the project can only happen if you've got 6. And you might think that that means it can't be done. And if you are living in the finite game, that's how a lot of people work. But what if you thought about it from an infinite game perspective? Of there is a way of doing this, I just haven't found out how yet. Because in that case, you could radically restructure the project, could find those limiting factors and work on those key points, restructuring everything, and you'd find a way of achieving it. Okay. So that infinite game, it's not about it's about having that infinite long-term view. It's about thinking what's happening years from now. It's about thinking that anything is possible, but to do so, we have to take these steps, and these are other steps we can't take. It's about we can't get there from where we are now. We need to restructure, we need to rethink, we need to break down and rebuild. And that willingness is what can make a really powerful leader. It's what can enable you to make a step change. And it also means that you're open-minded when your team comes to you with ideas that mean changing things that are already happening, radically restructuring how you go about things, but in order to get that long-term win for the team, you, and the organization. So that infinite mindset is important. Now, one other thing I wanted to explore in this vlog was something that comes up a lot when we start talking about mindset. And there's things like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Who's heard of that phrase? Sometimes there are beliefs that if someone's been doing something a certain way for a long time, let's say they appear to have a fixed mindset, that they're unchangeable. And people will say that they can't do things differently. Now, for that, a really interesting book to read is Mind Change. I know I'm referring to a lot of books lately, aren't I? This book combines a couple of things. One, it looks at the theory of neuroplasticity, which is actually the brain's ability to lay down new neural pathways. For example, it is just as easy to learn the piano as an adult as it is as a child, and your brain will lay down not just new neural pathways related to learning the piano, but more extensive neural nets that add value to other thinking processes in your mind. That has been researched and proven. That's neuroplasticity. One of the recommendations I have for a leader if they want to expand their perception and their creativity is learn a musical instrument. Okay? That will expand the neural network in your brain. Now, the other thing this book looks at is it actually looks at how digital technologies are actually changing brains and changing how we think. So it's a great living, real example of neuroplasticity. How we think is different because of the digital networks and digital technologies we are using. Okay. So it's a really interesting point that as a leader, usually far more important than how we approach a task or how we approach people is our actual mindset that underlies everything. So my challenge to you as leaders is analyze yourself. Think, where do I have an actual fixed mindset? Where do I find myself saying, well, this is what we should do instead of what could we do? Where do I find myself balking and feeling that little bit of emotional resistance to when someone suggests doing something differently? Because that's where my fixed mindset is. And it could be useful to have a fixed mindset about things. I mean, having a fixed mindset about my daily routines helps me get through things without thinking too much. But I need to critically examine as a leader whether those fixed mindsets are helping my team and organization or hindering my team and organization. And then I'm going to think, when I hit up against something which seems to have finite boundaries around it, of there's reasons why we can't do things, is there a way of restructuring that to make it an infinite game instead of a finite game? That's your second challenge. Find a project that seems impassable at the moment and work out how it could be accomplished. Now, you might not want to do the changes and restructuring that would enable it to be done, but there is a way. So changing your thinking from a series of finite games where the rules are fixed, the endpoint's clear, and the players are known, and thinking like infinite games. There's no defined endpoint. I mean, nobody's going to win business. The only winning point for business is one supreme organization that outcompetes everybody else. Is that a realistic objective? No. So there are games in life which don't have an end. And thinking that way and thinking about we're on a journey rather than focusing on the destination is a huge mindset shift for leaders. And it can make the difference between being a confident leader who's respected and admired by followers and being a bit of a task-focused micromanager. Okay? And then the last thing to realize is that as a leader, you and everybody else has neuroplasticity. You have the ability to lay down new neural networks. It takes effort, it takes planning, it takes thought, but it can be done. It might be a struggle. So my challenge to you on this one is, what new neural pathways and habits do you want to lay down to become a more confident leader? And who knows? The Confident Leader Journey program might be able to help you with that. So you can find us on Facebook, Confident Leader Journey. You can find us at confidentleaderjourney.com, and I look forward to seeing you there. Take care.